The transfer portal hasn't exactly opened up. December 4th is the day that the wild, wild west returns, but it's already gotten crazy to this point, and a select group of names are already putting a lot of quarterbacks. Penn State obviously doesn't need a quarterback, but some skilled players, linemen, guys in the defensive backfield, which are definitely must haves for Penn State. Just the first initial group, what names stand out to you that Penn State should definitely be targeting?
I would think that, right, you look at Penn State's roster and
Mhm.
kind of the main sticking points, as you kind of just pointed out there, would be, anybody who watched this year, wide receiver is going to be something that position that Penn
Yeah.
State's going to be heavily invested in. Defensive back, specifically corner, more so than safety. Penn State should be fine at safety, but could
Mhm.
use a little bit of depth at corner, especially if Kalen King goes to the NFL, as I think we all expect.
Yeah.
And then, just like any other college or any other program in the country, offensive line, specifically offensive tackle, defensive line, whether it's D ends or D tackles, you can always use those guys, on the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. So those would really be the main position groups that I think Penn State's looking at. I guess we can start by talking about wide receivers. So I can just
Yeah.
rattle off a couple different names that have entered and Penn State seems interested in. Uh, First one would be Chris Mitchell from FIU, which
Yeah.
why are we talking about a kid from Florida? Well, his brother, John Mitchell, is currently committed to Penn State, 4-star cornerback. So
Yeah.
Chris is his older brother, was a really, really good wide receiver for Florida International this year. I believe had around like 60 catches or something like that. I don't have the exact
Mhm.
numbers in front of me, but certainly a name to remember. A couple Big Ten guys, Donovan McCauley at Indiana, who, if you remember during the Penn
Yep.
State game, he's the one who caught the, I think 69-yard touchdown pass where there's a miscommunication between the defensive backfield, the second
Yep.
miscommunication, because there's a couple in that game.
Few of
Big
them, yeah.
kid, originally from Indianapolis, I believe, 6'4". Once again, had around 40 catches for Indiana this year. And then staying in the Big Ten, Dion Burks, who I was actually just, trying to find some Purdue highlights earlier in the day and was watching him. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's about 5'11", 190, but allegedly Purdue's fastest player, and the highlights match that.
Mhm.
Certainly somebody that you could see playing the slot or playing on the outside, just somebody that you want to get the ball into the hands of. So he entered as well. And just generally when it comes to the transfer portal and trying to pick out guys who Penn
Yeah.
State's interested in, because we could go on and on. There's Miles Price at Texas Tech. There's Chris Tyree, who, if you follow the recruiting,
That's
he
what I
was
was gonna bring up, yep.
running back prospect. He's now a wide receiver, and he's entering the portal from Notre Dame. Purdue has another wide receiver, TJ Sheffield. But if you really want to find out who Penn State's interested in, other than, if somebody tweets out that they have an offer, find a Penn State coach on Twitter, go to his following list, and if you see that he's following one of these guys, it probably means that they're interested, specifically James Franklin. So, for example, James Franklin is already following Dion Burks from Purdue. So, just
Mhm.
wide receiver wise, he's probably going to be one of their main targets. But there's just so many different guys at wide receiver, and we'll see who else enters. But as far as wide receivers go, those would kind of be the names that I would stick with for now. You were going to mention Chris Tyree. What are your thoughts on Chris Tyree, Zach? Because
I
I'm
mean,
not sure what to think of him.
yeah, I like the variety of ways that if whoever the offensive coordinator is, and I feel like that's what it's dependent on.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to directly compare him to KJ Hamler. I feel like, okay, since he does have that running back background, moves to wide receiver, I feel like you could do some creative things, especially if you have another adaptation of the pro style offense to go with Drew Aller. I
Mm-hmm.
think of maybe some people are probably going to go nuts that I'm not making a comparison to Tavon Austin, but what if you can use him in Tavon Austin like ways, right? Somebody who has that shifty athleticism is
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in the backfield. You can put him in the slot. You can line him up out wide. Just use his speed, use that athleticism in a variety of ways. I feel like if Penn State's going to win the transfer portal this year, yeah, they need guys. They need depth at offensive line, defensive tackle, particularly because Devon Ellies, it sounds like he's going to go to the NFL. We don't know the status of Hakeem Beamon, but the reason Penn State's run defense was so much better this year was because the interior of the defensive line actually took a major step forward. And if you're going to lose some of those veteran guys, I know you're getting Zane Durant back. Don't get me wrong, and he'll be better, but you need the depth, and something that Penn State had this season. The depth was intact. at most, if not the entire year. But they do have to make the splash plays. They have to make the splash, I guess, commitments, if you will. In this case, you have to be so good at recruiting now because it's not just about convincing high school kids. College young men who have already played and kind of understand the landscape of college football as it is. I feel like it's much more difficult to recruit in the transfer portal than it is for high school.
It's such an expedited process as well, where I
Yeah.
mean, you can even look at, you know, a lot of these guys are entering the portal and they already have their, their minds made up. Like there's rumors that, Duke's quarterback Riley Leonard went into the portal, and if you look up Riley Leonard on Twitter, he's basically already headed to Notre Dame. Max Johnson from Texas A&M is already committed to North Carolina. I think there was a Middle Tennessee State kid who entered yesterday already committed to Vanderbilt. So on top of, having those guys that are jumping in, with an idea of where they're going to go, you don't have a month to, build a relationship with these kids. The same way that in recruiting, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
not even
long
months,
process.
it's years. So even from, Penn State's perspective, or James Franklin, or whoever, is
Mhm.
the lead recruiter for some of these portal guys, it's making quick decisions on, not only fit football wise, but fit personality. What's their work
Mhm.
ethic like? Can they get into school as far as like admissions go with, that transfer process? So it's, a timeline that ideally would be, weeks, if not months, that's all of a sudden, tied up into, in some cases days. So it just makes it really, really tough. And especially for Penn State nowadays, and this is really the case for every program. I think if you go back, right, 4 or 5 years, it was, oh, Jordan Stell, like, yeah, we could use a kicker, or oh, we need
Mhm.
one wide receiver, or maybe we'll take a backup tight end. I think you're going to see Penn State, just like we're seeing programs more and more and more. I mean, Clemson offered a kid today, which if Dabo's jumping in the transfer portal, it just tells you how important it
Exactly.
is. Penn State's going to be taking multiple kids. They're going to be taking multiple wide receivers. They're probably going to take multiple kids in the secondary. So
Yep.
it's not just, oh, we want to pick up 2 or 3 kids. It's in some cases picking up 2 and 3 kids per position, which obviously when you're, talking to however many, let's just say 8, 9, 10 wide receivers, kind of flushing out your board that way can
Mhm.
be very difficult. So I don't envy as much as entertaining as it is for me. I don't envy the decisions and just all the work that goes into it that James Franklin and his staff will have to be making of these next couple days and weeks. So